I stepped into the charged family gathering, my eyes locking with Mara's, a former nemesis whose gaze now seared with both forbidden longing and old bitter rivalry. In that reckless moment of extending a trembling hand to rebuild shattered trust, I understood with devastating clarity that every scar between us was both a dark promise of healing and a reminder of the inescapable past I could never outrun. Chapter 1. Unexpected Reunion. The rain had stopped only minutes before, leaving the world washed in a quiet glow as the setting sun cast long shadows over the old family estate. Elena adjusted the collar of her jacket as she stepped through the wrought iron gate, her eyes scanning the crowd gathered in the expansive garden. It had been years since her last visit here, and she wasn't entirely sure which memories she was prepared to face. The reunion was meant to be a time of healing, a long-awaited opportunity to mend years of silent grievances and hard-fought battles. But as Elena moved among her relatives, her mind was pinpointed on the person she never imagined she would see again so soon, Mara, the woman whose presence had once ignited fierce rivalry and bitter confrontations. Elena's heart thudded in her chest every time her gaze landed near Mara. Their history together was written in a series of clashes, both physical competitions and verbal skirmishes that had scorched the pride of two families. Mara had always been a worthy adversary, strong-willed and unyielding. Now, however, beneath the animated laughter of family banter and the soft clinking of cutlery at long dinner tables, there was a strange tension in the air that went beyond past animosities. Elena recalled the days when their meetings were sparks of conflict. That era was filled with obstacles that challenged the strongest of wills. Her inner voice whispered that leaving the past behind was easier said than done. Even as the family sorting of old disputes had been carefully arranged by relatives eager for reconciliation, the familiarity of Mara's penetrating stare made it clear that unresolved emotions still swirled beneath the surface. It wasn't all the anger of years gone by, though. Amid past wounds lay hints of something else, a mutual curiosity about what they might have become if only they had taken the time to understand each other outside the battlefield of clashing ideals. The moment arrived during a scripted lull in the festivities. Elena had just stepped away from a group of chattering cousins when she saw Mara by the old oak tree in the center of the garden. Mara's posture was aloof yet elegant, her gaze tracing the patterns of light and shadow among the fallen leaves. For a few long seconds, time seemed to hold its breath, and Elena found herself caught in a silent standoff that mingled memory with the present. The air between them was charged with both the remnants of past bitterness and the delicate, almost imperceptible stirrings of something like longing. It was Mara who broke the silence, her voice soft but not without edge. "Elena, it has been a long time." Simple words that carried difficult underlying currents. Elena's response was measured, laced with both caution and the flicker of an emotion she hardly recognized, curiosity. "Yes, it has," she replied, her tone neutral enough to mask the tempest beneath. In that moment, their eyes locked, and Elena could see flashes of the fierce spirit that had once made them adversaries. But there was also something unexpected, a recognition of shared scars and vulnerabilities that had accumulated over countless battles fought in the public eye. For the next several minutes, they wandered away from the prying glances of their relatives, finding themselves in a nook of the garden where the ambient murmuring of family voices faded into the background. The abandoned gazebo, draped in vining roses and memories of brighter days, became their temporary refuge. Here, amid the quiet rustle of leaves, Elena allowed herself to remember not only the battles, but also the unspoken respect that had occasionally surfaced in the midst of arguments. There was a time when they'd shared more than just conflict, a time when they had held a mutual admiration for the strength they both exhibited in the face of familial expectations. The conversation was cautious at first. Every word was weighed, every glance measured, as if both were testing whether old wounds could be soothed by the balm of truth. "I never expected to see you here," Mara admitted, her tone introspective. The honesty in her confession was startling, catching Elena off guard. There was no grand declaration of remorse or triumph here, just an honest acknowledgement of their shared past and the pain it had inflicted on both sides. Elena's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. Each recollection of the bitter exchanges and the prideful confrontations was now blurred by the gentle undertones of longing, a secret wish, perhaps, for reconciliation and understanding. She was determined to remain strong, to uphold her own identity forged through years of struggle. Yet the pull of something different tugged at her resolve. The quiet intensity in Mara's eyes, the soft vulnerability that occasionally broke through her usual steely facade, hinted at a complexity that Elena could no longer ignore. What if there were parts of their lives left unexplored by the endless cycle of enmity? As the evening progressed, the family gathering around them evolved from a celebration to a backdrop of silent opportunities for connection. Amid shared meals, laughter, and mutual recollections of better times, Elena felt the stirrings of an internal struggle. Resentment, the bitter remembrance of obstacles, perceived betrayals and separate battles, vied with a dawning curiosity about what might have been if both had chosen a different path. At times she would catch herself contemplating the possibility of a life untouched by the weight of inherited grudges, a life where rivalry might someday give way to cooperation, even friendship, or something more profound. Mara's demeanor, too, seemed to shift as the night deepened. The defiant posture that had characterized her during their early encounters was softened by shared memories of a once familiar past. The barriers, carefully erected over years, began to feel less insurmountable when both women acknowledged that beneath the competitive fire lay emotions as human as any, and as vulnerable. Their conversation meandered from cautious observations about the past to gentle musings on the future, a future that had always been obscured by the fog of conflict, but might now be cleared by the light of honest introspection. Walking back to the main hall, Elena's internal resolve solidified. She realized that the journey toward forgiveness and understanding would not be the swift resolution of a single evening. Instead, it was a gradual, cautious steps dance, a series of moments where both fear and hope would collide, and where every smile, every shared glance, might serve either as a reminder of old wounds or the gentle promise of healing. In that charged moment of reunion, Elena understood that while the past demanded acknowledgement, the future beckoned with possibilities if only they were willing to venture cautiously beyond the remnants of rivalry. As they stepped among the familiar faces of their extended family, the beauties of the old world mingled with the promise of renewal. Every step Elena took was infused with the bittersweet taste of remembrance, and the tantalizing hint of what might be if she could set aside the armor that years of conflict had forced her to wear. And so, with the legacy of old battles still echoing in the corridors of her heart and a new, fragile hope kindling beneath, the reunion was marked not by a definitive end to their enmity, but by the prologue of an unexplored journey, one where understanding and healing might finally find their long-overdue entrance into their intertwined lives. Chapter 2. Bridging the Divide. The rain outside played a gentle cadence on the window panes as Aria and Julian sat across from one another at a long, scarred wooden table in the community center, a neutral ground chosen by their families, in hopes of mending what had been broken for decades. Both carried the weight of history on their shoulders, Aria with the lingering hurt of past betrayals and an unspoken understanding that the wounds her family inflicted ran deep, Julian with a guarded soul, hardened by a lifetime of inherited grudges that refused to fade, regardless of his own inner turmoil. Forced together by circumstances neither could fully control, the two embarked on a daunting project, a collaborative initiative to restore peace between their feuding families. This was more than a mere assignment. It was an opportunity to rebuild the bridges that had long since crumbled under the weight of old narratives. At first, every word exchanged was measured, each glance laden with the echoes of past resentments. They began by poring over project outlines, meticulously planning community events, designed to reopen channels of communication among those who once shared laughter and love. As they sifted through dusty files and photographs, their minds wandered into memories that had once promised hope, but had been eclipsed by what ifs and might have beens. During one late afternoon session, when the sky had darkened into a forgiving twilight and the room was bathed in a muted glow, Julian spoke quietly about his own experiences. His voice, soft and vulnerable, revealed deep-seated scars that went beyond the riddles of familial conflict. He recounted a moment from his childhood, a time when a single act of kindness had softened the sting of a harsh word. For years he had buried that memory beneath layers of pride and bitterness, afraid that showing vulnerability would undermine his hardened persona. But here, amidst the silent crumpling of old defenses, he felt an unfamiliar yearning for understanding. Arya listened intently, her eyes softening as she recognized the genuine pain behind his carefully chosen words. In that moment, confrontation slowly melted away to reveal shared ideals and hopes. Each of them had been, in their own way, a victim of circumstance, molded by histories they did not choose, yet struggling fiercely to forge a future that resembled more than just a repetition of the past. With hesitant candor, Arya shared her own memories of loss, of a time when the warmth of family gatherings had been replaced by cold silences. She described how each strained encounter left an indelible mark, a scar that had both defined and confined her. There, in the quiet intimacy of earnest conversation, the murky waters of old grievances began to clear and let in light. They discovered that beneath their strong exteriors beat hearts, fueled by a desire for genuine reconciliation. The pivotal moment came unexpectedly, as they shifted from the structured world of project details to the unstructured world of personal reflection. In these moments away from prying eyes and rhetorical obstacles, they realized that what they had always taken for parchment and law was, in truth, a canvas of shared humanity. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day filled with the hard work of dismantling emotional barriers, they found themselves alone in the center's quiet library, a repository of memories and lost words. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a solitary lamp. Julian, normally so unyielding, hesitated as he closed a heavy book of family history, his voice trembling ever so slightly as he murmured, "I never imagined that our stories could intersect in such fragile beauty." Arya's eyes met his, and within that converging gaze lay an unspoken promise, a recognition that every hurt deserved a chance at healing. In the silence that followed, every unspoken word and dormant hope lay bare between them. The passage of time seemed too slow, as they began to bridge the chasm that had once seemed insurmountable. A tentative smile flickered on Arya's face, a genuine, fragile smile that hinted at the prospect of forgiveness. Julian, emboldened by her acceptance and compelled by the sincerity of the moment, stepped closer. The air pulsed with an electricity that betrayed the calm of the room, heralding change, urging them to cast aside the remnants of old defenses. With nothing left to obscure the truth of their vulnerability, Arya and Julian shared a kiss. It was not a passionate, desperate collision of pent-up emotion, but rather a delicate and measured brush, a silent promise to seek redemption in one another. In that transient moment, every bitter note of the past was replaced by the gentle cadence of new hope. The kiss carried the quiet determination of hearts that had been wounded, but were now reaching out in earnest for peace. As they slowly pulled apart, the world around them did not seem to vanish, but rather, it was transformed by the magic of their own small breakthrough. In their eyes, for the first time in a long time, glimmered not the reflection of old scars, but the gentle light of possibility, a future where wounds might finally begin to mend, and where trust could be slowly restored. As the night deepened and the rain eased into a soft patter against the window, they both understood that this was only the first step on a long road to reconciliation. Their renewed partnership was delicate and uncertain, fragile as a spider's web in the early morning dew, yet it was real. The following days unfolded with a hard-earned sense of unity. The project took on new life as strategies, and community events were planned with a newfound personal investment. Each idea was a brick in the slowly mending wall between two divided worlds. Every meeting was punctuated by shared laughter, gentle reminders of a time when the weight of legacy was heavy enough to numb the spirit of youth. Broken barriers began to crumble in the face of collective passion for renewal. Late one night, as Arya and Julian finalized the details for an upcoming community forum, they paused in a quiet moment of reflection. Neither needed to speak in order to express the depth of what they had felt earlier. Through the window, the first hints of dawn could be seen, a promise of light after darkness, and the future stretched before them, uncertain but full of potential for new beginnings. Their hands brushed lightly as they reached for the same folder, the touch resonating like the final note of a long-overdue symphony. In that brief contact, old animosities that had long ruled their interactions were replaced by the soft whispers of understanding and a collective desire to build something new. In the delicate interplay of vulnerability, determination, and acceptance, the divide that had once seemed insurmountable was bridged. This chapter in their lives became a testament to the fact that even in the shadow of a painful past, quiet moments could birth powerful transformations. For Arya and Julian, every step forward was dawning the promise of reconciliation. A promise that they hoped would one day mend not only their own fractured spirits, but also the divided souls of the families they had come to represent. Thus, as the project advanced, with each carefully planned event and shared smile, the echo of the day's delicate kiss lingered in their hearts. It was a beacon in the midst of lingering uncertainty, a tender reminder that even the deepest divides could be bridged when two people dared to see the humanity in one another. Chapter 3. The Catalyst of Revelation. The evening was thick with expectation as the family gathered in the warmly lit living room of the old estate, a place steeped in secrets and long-held grudges. It was meant to be another healing session, a safe haven where old wounds could be soothed. But that night, the air was loaded with an undercurrent of unspoken truths, and every smile, every murmured reassurance, seemed just a step away from collapse. At the center of the room stood Elena and Marcus, their presence a beacon of cautious hope amid generations of dysfunction. The lingering warmth between them, carefully nurtured over recent months, had become a fragile promise of reconciliation that now hung in a delicate balance. The family reunion, intended to be a neutral ground for shared healing, quickly transformed into a stage for buried resentments to resurface with a tumultuous force. As conversation meandered through awkward memories and polite nods, a sudden and unexpected outburst shattered the imposed calm. Aunt Teresa, whose sharp tongue had long been both feared and revered in these circles, broke down years of silence with a ferocity that commanded stunned attention. "How can you keep pretending that everything was just misunderstood?" she cried, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. It was a question that reverberated like an echo through the assembled family, exposing old fractures and hidden scars. Marcus, who had long maintained that painful incident in his past was a result of miscommunication and misinterpretation, a belief he had hoped to gently revisit with Elena, found himself suddenly under scrutiny. A younger cousin, her voice small but determined, confronted him directly. "You told us you never intended to hurt anyone, but the truth has been lying here all along." Her words, unpolished yet passionate, sliced through the tentative trust that Elena and Marcus had begun to rebuild. In that moment, the old feelings of betrayal and pain surged forth, mingling with the stray hopes of forgiveness. Elena watched, heart pounding in terror and longing, as the confrontation began to unravel not only the long-held narratives, but also the fragile connection between the two of them. It began slowly, with hesitant accusations and defensive retorts. As the conversation advanced, family members joined in, each echoing their own experiences of perceived wrongdoing. Marcus's eyes burned with indignation and regret as he recalled the misguided decisions made in the past, a well of pain he had both feared and tried to hide away. "You all think I was cold, calculated," he said, his tone raw and vulnerable. "But every decision I made was driven by a desperate need to protect those I love, even if it meant shutting others out." The confession, heavy with remorse, carried as much honesty as it did the scars of past misunderstandings. Elena's own memories of betrayal surfaced as biting recollections of moments when promises had been broken and trust shattered. The room, already charged with high emotions, seemed to pulse with the intensity of the revelations. A stifled sob from her aunt, the voice of anger from a cousin, and the overwhelming silence of those who had been forced to listen amplified the atmosphere of confrontation. It was no longer about a mere gathering. It had morphed into a reckoning of old wounds and the necessity of declaring truths too long suppressed. Between the converging voices, a moment of shocking clarity emerged. The misunderstandings that had once appeared as isolated incidents were, in reality, threads of a much larger tapestry of grief and miscommunication that defined the family's legacy. Marcus's earlier actions, seen through the narrow lens of previous generations, now revealed shades of guilt and misguided intent. And Elena, whose heart had started to soften at the thought of new beginnings, realized that her own reservations about forgiving were now entwined with the recognition of a shared human frailty. As if compelled by some unseen force, the verbal storm reached a crescendo. Elena, trembling yet determined, stepped forward to interject between the voices on all sides. Her voice, quiet at first, grew steadily with resolve. We are all living under the weight of our past mistakes. Yes, we have been hurt, but hiding behind anger or silence will only continue this cycle of pain. Her words, simple and profound, cut through the escalating fury like a prayer for peace. But even as she spoke of understanding and the need for healing, the tension between her and Marcus became palpably charged with unspoken feelings. In that charged moment, as the debate swirled and the foundation of the family's bonds wavered, Marcus caught Elena's eye, a silent plea that transcended the clamor of the room. Their gazes locked, and both recognized that the storm raging around their family was also a reflection of the turmoil inside them. With all the fury of betrayed hopes and fractured dreams echoing in the background, Marcus closed the gap between them. The world around them melted into insignificance, a chaotic sea from which they sought solace. Without a word, Marcus reached out, drawing Elena into a desperate embrace. Their lips met in a raw, passionate kiss, one that was as much an apology as it was an assertion of their willingness to try again. It was a moment when time seemed to stand still, where the shared pain of their histories was momentarily replaced by a singular focus on mutual forgiveness. The kiss was not a complete remedy for past wrongs, they both knew that would require more than a single moment, but it was a fervent, unspoken promise that they were ready to confront and heal their scars together. In the dim glow of the room, the kiss radiated a piercing intensity, bridging the chasm of miscommunications and hurt that had long divided them. For a few precious seconds, the tumult of the entire gathering receded, leaving behind only the echo of a heartfelt vow. As they slowly pulled apart, their foreheads gently resting against one another, a fragile new hope stirred between them. The tension that had threatened to tear apart everything they had built was now interlaced with the raw intensity of renewed commitment. Around them, family members stood in uncertain silence, dawning gradually on the realization that this confrontation, brutal and unyielding as it was, could be the turning point they had all desperately needed. The gathering, initially intended as a quiet attempt to mend the old fractures, had transformed into a catalyst for truth. And though the night was not without scars, it had clearly laid the groundwork for a more authentic, if challenging, path to healing. In the aftermath of the explosive confrontation, as voices began to subside, and the warmth of the initial gathering was tentatively reclaimed, Elena and Marcus lingered in the intimate glow of their shared vulnerability. They were silently aware that the journey ahead would demand the unraveling of decades of misunderstanding, heartache, and entrenched fear. Yet in that moment, buoyed by the release of pent-up emotions and the passionate reconciliation captured by their kiss, they dared to hope that every truth spoken would pave the way for new beginnings. The night's events were a powerful reminder that often it takes the tempest of raw revelation to clear the path for transformation. And as the family gathering slowly migrated from confrontation to contemplative dialogue, the echo of that passionate kiss reverberated in every heart, a gentle, persistent call to let go of old grievances and embrace the possibility of healing together. Chapter 4. Renewed Horizons. Under the soft transition of dusk to dawn, the room felt different from the days of conflict, less oppressive, as if the walls themselves were learning to breathe again. This evening marked a farewell to the old cycle of fear and misunderstanding. In the living room of an old family home, both families gathered to forge understanding and begin anew. Evelyn and Marcus, burdened by sorrow and suspicion, sat together across a low wooden table. Between them lay remnants of past miscommunications, letters, photographs, and mementos of misunderstanding. Their eyes now sought each other with cautious hope, peeling away walls built stone by stone. Olivia, a figure of wisdom from Evelyn's family, guided the mediation. With empathy, she invited each family member to share their stories, reopening wounds, not to relitigate but to understand. At one point a tear glided down Marcus' cheek, a symbol of recognizing past errors and present vulnerability. In a sparsely decorated corner, Evelyn admitted her fear of being hurt again, while Marcus revealed his terror of losing independence. Their confessions resonated, stitching together renewed trust. With every memory corrected, the fog of misunderstanding began to clear. Families witnessed the subtle alchemy of forgiveness, realizing they had been manipulated by miscommunication. At the mediation's heart, Evelyn and Marcus found their true adversary was fear, stemming from untended wounds. Evelyn suggested a return to vulnerability, emphasizing trust over mere affection. Marcus nodded in relief, agreeing to let go of hatred and embrace the hopeful possibility of connection. Their families, having witnessed enough conflict, embraced this newfound resolve. As the mediation closed, families retreated to cherished memories, but Evelyn and Marcus remained alone. On a small terrace, they revisited silent vows. In that space, burdens dissipated, replaced by warmth for those who see beyond hurt. Marcus gently brushed a stray lock of hair from Evelyn's face, a gesture as simple as it was transformative. In that intimate moment, every barrier fell away. Marcus leaned in for a kiss that was perfectly measured and assured, consummating a long journey. It was the end of resistance and pain, replaced by the courage to live genuinely. Under the night sky, the renewed horizon became their reality. As dawn broke, a soft light heralded not just another day, but a shared journey free from old rivalries. Evelyn and Marcus' hands intertwined, contemplated their path ahead, a deliberate choice of love over fear, and renewal over old wounds. In the embrace of morning with unburdened hearts, they stepped towards a bright future they have